Everybody, and welcome back to Trudge, a journey to being recovered. My name is Dexter. I am a recovered drug addict and alcoholic. I want to pick up on the work that we finished last week with the chapter called Two Wives, Part 2. We are all wrapped up with. We're going to finish this chapter this week with Two Wives, Part 3. It's just a couple of pages, but I was kind of out of it and gassed last week and we couldn't get through it. So we're going to finish that off. And then next week we're going to start a chapter called The Family Afterward. I hope everyone's doing okay. I hope your spiritual experience is taking full hold and you're practicing what you've been taught and what you've learned here through 12 steps in your lives, and things are getting better for you. Hopefully by this time you're giving back what was so freely given to you, sponsoring others, helping others in an altruistic way, and then teaching the 12 steps has been probably one of the best ways I can say I've been able to stay recovered. So last week we finished on page 117, and this week we are going to start on page 118. Like I said, it's just a few pages, but we'll power through that. And there's a couple other things I want to talk about today, a couple finds that came my way that I think are just fantastic, that I just love to share with you guys. So let's take a second and open up our book study like we open up all our book studies with the third step prayer. This is on page 63 for those of you who are just joining the program. And for those of you who have been with me from the beginning, this is highlighted pink. Pink stands for prayers. Let's take a second, invite God in, and let's go ahead and finish this chapter. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Thanks for those of you who joined in, and let's go ahead and get back to the work. Top of page 118, it says, you and your husband will find that you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. This is, as you practice the spiritual principles that have been, spoken about so eloquently in this book, and especially in this chapter. It says, the next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, this is getting serious. I'm sorry, I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later. If your husband is trying to live on a spiritual basis, he will also be doing everything in his power to avoid disagreement or contention. And I gotta tell you, I used to get in some heated fights with ex-wives and partners and girlfriends and all that, and as the spiritual experience took hold of me, it just seems like I want to fight a whole lot less. There's just more discussions that can take place. Go to your neutral corner, gather yourself, pray. Prayer has been a big part of the relationship that I'm in now, and come out, with a level head. Again, the book talks about argument and fault finding to be avoided like the plague. So if you're following, the tenets of what's in this book, trying to avoid things like that and be level headed is a huge part of, maintaining the relationship. It also says that your husband knows he owes you more than sobriety. He wants to make good. Yet, you must not expect too much. His ways of thinking and doing are the habits of years, okay? The alcoholism, this has been going on for quite a long time. In a lot of cases, it's gone on longer than before a drink was even put into someone's body, longer than we can even remember in a lot of cases. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. These are the words that I try to live my life by. Every time I pray in the morning, I ask God to help me, to show me the ways of these four things. You just cannot go wrong living according to these four things, okay? Show him these things in yourself, and they will be reflected back to you from him. And it's amazing what happens when you're able to do that in intimate relationships or any relationships. Just with in your day-to-day interactions with other people, 9 out of 10 times, what you bring is what you'll be met with. If you're a jerk to people, they'll probably be a jerk to you. But when you're loving and kind, more times than not, at least that's been my experience. I mean, that's depending on where you live, sure. But going out of your way to be positive, to be nice to other people in your relationships of all varieties, it's never really a bad thing. God's will for us is not to, be hurtful and to be awful to other people. This is going to be rule number 3. It's going to be highlighted orange. We spoke about the first 2 rules in the preceding pages. I believe it was page 76 was rule number 1. I believe rule number 2 is in the early 100s. This is rule number 3. It says, live and let live is the rule. That's going to be highlighted orange. It also is going to go on and continuing highlighted orange. It says, if you both show a willingness, and that key word there is willingness. Let's go ahead and circle that word. A willingness to remedy your own defects, there will be little need to criticize each other's. And there it is. It's like, before you call somebody out, make sure you're calling out yourself. If you're taking care of your own side of the street, chances are you're not going to have to worry about taking care of somebody else's. You're not going to have to call her out. I'm not worrying about what my fiance is doing. I'm worrying about me taking care of my own. What am I doing? And how am I treating her? What part am I playing in the relationship? Am I doing what I'm supposed to? More times than not, if I do less finger pointing and look inward at what I'm doing, we have kind of a lot less things to argue about. Not to say things aren't going to come up. They are. That's just how you handle them today. There's no real substitute for maturity, and there's absolutely no substitute in my life for the spiritual experience and the power of God. Living altruistically, living, according to God's will and not my self-will, kind of has had things kept, kind of calm and quiet in this relationship that I'm in. And I believe that this is what, this chapter is trying to speak to. Throughout all the turmoil of the tornado that can be an alcoholic, some peace can be found when the program is followed, when the spiritual principles embodied in the steps are lived, not just worked and then forgotten about, but really done, and to the best of your ability. We women carry with us a picture of the ideal man, the sort of chap we would like our husbands to be. It is the most natural thing in the world, once his liquor problem is solved, to feel that he will now measure up to that cherished vision. A lot of times that's just not true. It's just maybe something that, you're asking him to be that he's not. Love your husband for who he is, not what you want him to be. I struggled with that in a lot of relationships, wanting her to be this, not loving her for who she was. The chances are he will not, for like yourself, he is just beginning his development. Be patient. Remember, patience and tolerance, kindliness and love. Boy, they just cannot be glanced over with a minimum of concern. Very, very important to really try to hold tight with these 4 spiritual principles. Another feeling we are likely to entertain is one of resentment that love and loyalty could not cure our husbands of alcoholism. Okay, guys, we know that there's no amount of love in the world that's going to keep a real alcoholic from going out and getting drunk. Okay, no human power can solve this issue. This is a spiritual sickness, therefore it must be solved spiritually. It must be remedied spiritually, okay? So to be resentful that you gave him all the love in the world, or that, being resentful, is going to not solve this, you can't be surprised when it doesn't. We do not like the thought that the contents of a book or the work of another alcoholic has accomplished in a few weeks, for which we have struggled for years. But that very well is the case in a lot of areas. I know once I started doing this work, all the work that I had done going to psychotherapy and doing other kinds of treatments and going to different churches trying to find a solution melted away within a few weeks, and I started to get well as soon as I followed this work, as soon as I understood really what it meant to be an alcoholic, as soon as I understand the doctor's opinion, what it is, what's wrong with me. I had a starting point from which I could grow, okay? This is going to be highlighted orange. It says, at such moments, we forget that alcoholism is an illness over which we could not possibly have had any power. It's just like saying, a man can cure cancer. There are treatments for it, but I can't just touch somebody and heal them. Maybe there's some people who can, but in this capacity, I have not yet to see that happen. I have not yet to see somebody have a spiritual experience by sitting next to someone who had a spiritual experience. I haven't seen it transmitted sexually. It takes work. It's just that simple, okay? No human power. This is a spiritual sickness. It's very important that we just continue to smash that point home to the husbands, to the wives, to anyone involved in the life of the alcoholic, okay? Your husband will be the first to say it was your devotion and care which brought him to the point where he could have a spiritual experience. Look at Lois Wilson. Bill would have never gotten as far as he did without the support of Lois. And there are other wives out there and significant others who have done the same thing. Thank God for you women. And the roles can be reversed. It could be the husband who's doing the supporting and the wife who's the alcoholic. This is not gender specific. It's important to remember, though, guys, when this was written, in the late 1930s, that the problem basically lay with men. But nowadays, there's all kinds of alcoholics, teenagers, wives, men, it could be anyone, okay? So you can just substitute whatever it is in and out. It is absolutely applicable, okay? So, without you, he would have gone to pieces long ago. When resentful thoughts come, try to pause and count your blessings. After all, your family's reunited, alcohol is no longer a problem, and you and your husband are working together toward an undreamed of future. So, it's early on here in this program. You're probably expecting more miracles to be happening a lot quicker. You're reading about these men who had spiritual experiences within a week, couple days, and you're wondering why this is not happening to your husband. It happens for people when it happens. Be grateful he's not drinking right now. Be patient, be tolerant, be kind, be supportive. If he continues to do this, more than likely his experience will be just like the men that you have read about in this book, and he will grow and your lives will be better. That undreamed of future will be a reality, and you will see promises manifest themselves in your lives and the lives of everyone around you that are going to be greater than anything you could have ever dreamed about. The fact that he's not drinking is enough right now. Sure, you may be expecting more based on what he put you through, but give it time, okay? Still, another difficulty is that you may become jealous of the attention he bestows on other people, especially alcoholics. This gets tricky, because the book talks to us about working with other alcoholics. That's what you want to do. Nothing is going to ensure more permanent recovery, so a nice chunk of your time is going to be spent looking for people to help or helping other people. I was in a relationship where this kind of was problematic. The goal is to have, to take care of your family and take care of other people while you take care of yourself. It's balanced throughout. It's God's will. You don't want to go try to sponsor 100 people, and then leave your wife at home starving for attention. There's a fine line, and it's very important to try to balance everything on that. I do the online program. I work with 4 other people, and I go to as many meetings as I can when I can without trying to forget about my fiance, forget about my son, my pets, my responsibilities at work. All of a sudden I have this life that Alcoholics Anonymous and the power of God has given me, but it's a fine balance that we have to find. You don't want to go top heavy on one, forgetting about what's going on at home. In the next chapter, The Family Afterward, we'll talk about that a little bit as well. It says, you have been starving for his companionship, yet he spends long hours helping other men and their families. You feel he should now be yours. The fact is that he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. So let's go ahead and highlight this last part, Orange. It says, the fact is that he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. It's very important. The book has said it so many different ways, so many different pages, how helping others is the way to go. It's what built this program. It's what's going to keep this original program of Alcoholics Anonymous alive, is one alcoholic teaching another this book. It's the core of recovery. It's how we stay recovered. Sometimes he will be so interested that he becomes really neglectful. Okay, do yourself a favor, men. Don't neglect your wife. Don't forget about her, okay? It's I got really excited when I started to see things change, and then I got in a relationship, and that relationship ended, not because I got, crazy busy with the work. Some things happened and had to end, but it taught me a lot about balance and how to make sure that you don't want to neglect your other responsibilities just because you're fired up about this work. It's about balance, okay? Your house is filled with strangers. You may not like some of them. This is how it was back in the day for Bill W. and Dr. Bob, having house filled with, people who may have drunk earlier that day. He gets stirred up about their troubles, but not at all about yours. It will do little good if you point that out and urge more attention for yourself. Okay? This is really difficult for wives to do. Don't think for a second, I don't understand that. If the shoe was on the other foot, I'd be like, oh, hell no, you got to be kidding me. I understand, and believe me, a lot of us recovered men understand as well. Okay? We find it a real mistake to dampen his enthusiasm for alcoholic work. You just want to support him as much as you can, with the understanding that if you continue to do so, be patient, These promises will manifest throughout the life of the whole family, okay? You should join in his efforts as much as you possibly can, take an active vested interest in what he's doing. Lois Wilson, she went outside, and all the wives that used to be sitting in the cars, she invited them in for coffee, and they had their own meeting. At first it was met with a little bit of resistance from the men, but look, this is a family disease. It's also going to be a family recovery, okay? If there are other women in your life who are struggling at the hands of their alcoholic husbands, join in. Find these women. Touch these women, especially if you have a husband who's further along than that husband may be. Tell that woman what you did, what it was like for you. Remember, helping others in any capacity. This is the goal, not only for the husbands, but for the family, for the wives. These spiritual principles, they're not gender specific. They work for anyone that does them, okay? It has its advantages for all. So, you should join in his efforts as much as you possibly can. We suggest that you direct some of your thought to the wives of his new alcoholic friends, just like I was just saying. I mean, there it is, okay? Don't sit on your hands and being resentful. Get involved, He needs you as much as these other alcoholic men's wives need you, okay? You are needed. You have purpose, okay? This is not something that he can do alone, okay? If you're banking on this marriage working or this relationship working and you have a vested interest in seeing it happen, get involved, okay? Sometimes it doesn't work. My ex-wife and I, we had to get divorced. I just wasn't there. I wasn't willing. And, there it was. I don't know where her head was at. We had to go. But if it has a bond there that can work, this is what the wife definitely should be doing, okay? They need the counsel and love of a woman who has gone through what they have. Showing others how you got through it is going to be so helpful to them. Remember, our dark past, the things that have happened in our lives, in our marriages, in our, alcoholism, in our recovery, it's the greatest asset we have. With it, we can avert death for other people, okay? Showing others how this has worked, how we have recovered, how the wives have recovered is the purpose of this book. It's the goal, all right? So, it is probably true that you and your husband have been living too much alone, for drinking many times isolates the wife of an alcoholic. Absolutely. Therefore, you probably need fresh interests and a great cause to live as much as your husband. This is important. If you cooperate rather than complain, you will find that his excess enthusiasm will tone down. Both of you will awaken to a new sense of responsibility for others. Again, helping others. It's everywhere in this book. The rest of the sentence is going to be highlighted orange. It says, you, as well as your husband, ought to think of what you can put into life instead of how much you can take out. What can you give? Where can you help? What can I do for you? Remember, best advice I ever got on relationships is pray for the other person's happiness. What can I do to best serve thee? When both people are doing that, boy, it's a recipe for success. And I got to tell you, I've never had a successful relationship in my life. I'm doing this now, and it's really working. It just really is. Maybe I just wasn't mature. Maybe I just wasn't ready. Maybe I didn't, maybe it didn't work because I hadn't had a spiritual awakening. I don't know. But these are the principles by which I lived through my own relationship, and it's really, it's serving me quite well. It says, inevitably, your lives will be fuller for doing so. You will lose the old life and find one much better. So there's like the psychic change around the relationship. He's having his own psychic change. You guys are having your own psychic change around your relationship together. It's a recipe for success. There's the bonding that's going when you're both becoming different people. Perhaps your husband will make a fair start on the new basis, but just as things are going beautifully, he dismays you by coming home drunk. This happens. This absolutely happens. And it's not, it's not written anywhere that once your toe touches that water of a spiritual experience, it sticks forever. Some people go back out. Okay? This is usually because something wasn't met throughout the work, or there was some unwillingness to do this, or they simply wanted to drink more than they wanted to stay well. Okay? It took me 11 years. It takes some people a long time. Okay? If you are satisfied he really wants to get over drinking, you need not be alarmed. Okay? That's it. You have to have that understanding that he really wants this. You can tell if somebody's really genuine. I gotta have this. I can't do this another day. And they slip. Don't be alarmed, okay? Though it is infinitely better that we have no relapse at all, absolutely, as has been true with many of our men, it is by no means a bad thing in some cases. Now, guys, it's important to understand that the book's not condoning relapse as being part of this. We're letting you know, or they're letting you know, that it happens. Okay, it's unrealistic to think that everybody that gets into this work seriously may not fall on their face once or twice. It happens, okay? The goal is to have no relapse at all. The goal is to go to any lengths to have a spiritual experience, okay? The goal is to work these steps and to help other people. My experience and the experience of a lot of other men and women is when you do that and God's power kicks in, the obsession to have to drink that alcohol or do that drug or whatever it is that you're brought here by is removed. And there is no relapse involved, okay? Your husband will see at once that he must redouble his spiritual activity. So redouble is going to be circled. We're going to double up, okay? We are going to go even harder at living spiritually. The word spiritual activities are going to be underlined. Whatever it is you were doing, you're going to throw yourself double into it. You know, for a while I struggled with sex. You know, on page 69 in the big book, it talks about that for people who struggle with that, or if the urge and the obsession is just so strong. I know some people struggle around gambling with this. Redouble your efforts. Do twice what you would do. You know, it takes that imperious urge away and helping others. It takes the focus off you. And believe me when I tell you, your higher power will look out after you, and you will be recovered by doing that work. Okay, it says, if he expects to survive, he must redouble of his efforts. People relapse all the time. No one's saying this is not part of it, but it doesn't have to be. And if it happens once, you might want to look at throwing yourself harder into working others. Throw yourself harder into these spiritual activities. They are the goal. You need not remind him of his spiritual deficiency. He'll know of it. You don't have to tell him, okay? Cheer him up and ask him how you can still be more helpful. Now, these are really hard things for the wife to have to do. Again, don't think that, I don't know. Don't think that us men who have recovered from this don't know. You know, this is hard for a wife to stomach, man. These, I mean, some of the greatest women on earth and throughout history, these legions of women who have stuck by their men. I mean, these women, they deserve awards for doing that. I mean, you want to talk about sticking to your vows to death do us part, man? I don't know if I could do this. You know, it's tremendous to see how these women have stuck by their men. And this is what the book is asking you to do, okay? The slightest sign of fear or intolerance. And I have those two words underlined. Fear and intolerance. Very, very vital to understand what these two words can do to this relationship and to the program. It says, may lessen your husband's chance of recovery. It may drop it, okay? In a weak moment, he may take your dislike of his high-stepping friends as one of those insanely trivial excuses to drink. Okay, he may not have really been experiencing, you know, his spiritual awakening yet, and there might be part of him still that wants to drink and is looking for out or looking for an excuse, and there it is. Okay, you never want to aid in helping an alcoholic or a drug addict going back out. You know, if you can't be helpful, don't be hurtful. You know, the book is very clear on what it's asking you to do as a wife or a significant other. It's very difficult to do. No one's saying it's easy, but this is the way to keeping him on track. You need to help him. He needs to help you. It's a two-way street. You know, God will help you both as long as you're definitely living spiritually. So, we never, and this is important, never, let's go ahead and underline the word never. Never, never. It even said it twice. Never, never try to arrange a man's life as to shield him from temptation. Okay, we spoke about that with rule number 2. You know, any, you know, kind of mold or, you know, what is it? How am I trying to say it? You know, let me just see if I can find it. I don't want to say it if I can't say it verbatim. Can't remember where it is. Oh yeah, here it is on page 101. Okay, we have this highlighted orange. It says, in our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation, it's doomed to failure. Okay, so again, just written a different way on a different page. You know, we don't want to arrange his life so he's not going to be tempted. You know, I mean, that's just, I mean, early on, absolutely, but, you know, as a spiritual experience starts to take place, man, you know, again, we're building an arch through which this man can walk freely anywhere, okay? Obviously, you don't want to be lining up kegs in the backyard. You know what I mean? If that's his issue, obviously, if his issue is gambling, you don't want to be going place, to casinos, But as his spiritual experience grows, there won't be any place he can't go. But we're not trying to shield him from temptation right now. It's early on. He's made it clear to you that he wants to get well. This is what he needs to be focusing on doing, okay? Later on, he can go to the most sordid places on earth once he's had a spiritual experience. Granted, he's got legitimate reasons for doing so. It says the slightest disposition on your part to guide his appointments or his affairs, so he will not be tempted. They'll be noticed, man. He'll take note. Okay? Make him feel absolutely free to come and go as he likes. Okay, you don't want to put a leash on your husband. He's trying enough to get well. It's simple but not easy. This is the work most people don't want to do. Okay, looking inward, getting well. Not just not drinking, but actually getting well. You can learn to live sick in Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous and all these 12-step programs. But this is a venture he's taking on to change the man who he is so he can have a better life, so you all can have a better life, okay? Don't go out of your way to try to arrange things. Don't play God. Make him feel absolutely free to go wherever he wants, okay? This is important. If he gets drunk, don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. You didn't put the alcohol to his lips, okay? It says, and I have this sentence underlined. It says, God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or he has not. If not, he'd better be found out right away so we can work on having that done. Our goal is to get you to God and get you to God now so we can have a spiritual experience and have this obsession lifted. Okay, it's better to know now if it's happening than later. You don't want to, assume that he's working, and putting in work, and getting well, and then 6 months later, relapse. We want to know now, because maybe there's some things that we could do, and one of them is redoubling your spiritual activities, okay? Then you and your husband can get right down to fundamentals. The fundamentals, they have to just be, it's got to be followed. God is everything, he is nothing, turning your will and your life over to God. The steps, the steps, altruistic living, working with others, prayer, meeting attendance. This is the fundamentals, okay? If a repetition is to be prevented, place the problem along with everything else in God's hands. God's hands is underlined. Again, if your husband has been placed in a position where he is beyond human help, if he's beyond human aid, if he's the alcoholic, the man or woman on page 21, the real alcoholic where control and choice, come into play, where, he knows that by this point in the program, in the work, everything should be given to God. Everything is about God's will. All right? When we do that, whatever the outcome may be, it's going to be what it's supposed to be. Top of page 121, it says, we realize that we have been giving you much direction and advice. We may have seemed to lecture. If that is so, we are sorry, for we ourselves don't always care for people who lecture us. No one likes to be lectured, but what they're really doing is that they're giving the wives the facts here. Okay, these facts have come out of bitter experience, and 9 out of 10 times they're applicable for the husband who's going through this, for the wife and the family who's going through this, But what we have related is based on our experience, some of it painful. It's been bitter. You watch some of these movies by this point, you know about some of the documentaries about the life of Bill W. and Dr. Bob and Bill D. and how these women suffered, man. Painful, mightily, at the hands of their alcoholic, husbands. It's crazy. We had to learn these things the hard way. That is why we are anxious that you understand and that you avoid these unnecessary difficulties, okay? So, to you out there, who may soon be with us, we say, good luck and God bless you. It's a powerful chapter. People think that it's just about the first 12 steps. The whole 164 is important. This is a big one, especially if the alcoholic is married and has got this wife or in a serious committed relationship and you want it to work. There's some information for that significant other, and when it's worked and two people are living spiritually and altruistically toward the common goal of not just not drinking or just putting whatever the behavior is on the shelf, but to have it removed, and living, in permanent recovery, it's a wonderful thing to watch. I've seen it happen with a couple people I've worked with and their wives and their families, boy, reunited, and it's an amazing thing to see. To know that God used you in that capacity to help that person is absolutely tremendous. So that's it for Two Wives. The next chapter is the family afterward. Gets more involved with the family. It's a long chapter. It's an interesting one. A lot more highlighting than in Two Wives. I got notes everywhere. It's gonna be good. So we'll do that next week. Not gonna start it now. I want to kind of talk a little bit about some things that came my way. I worked with a woman who's been in this program a long, long time, a couple decades. She told me about this book. The Anonymous Press has, published this volume of the Big Book, and they made a study guide out of it. I remember when I was first doing this work, I would say to my sponsor and even to the first person I was working with, God, it'd be nice if there was like an index or a dictionary to go with this book, because a lot of times I'm looking for something and I can't find it. Even with the color scheme that we use, finding stuff can be very difficult. One word, would be able to take you to a page, and sure enough, that's what this book is. It is like the Cliff Notes of the Big Book. It's tremendous. I mean, it's got all the original manuscripts, all the original stories. It's got a glossary. It's got an index. I mean, anything you could possibly want as a study guide for this book is here. And I couldn't believe it when she told me about it. And you can get it on Amazon for $17. I remember my sponsor telling me that I might want to try to find like a 1939 dictionary, because it would help with some of the words and the jargon that they use, especially like in Bill's story. Those things are hundreds of dollars if you can even get your hands on those. This has everything. It's got margins so you can do a lot of writing instead of just putting your notes here. It's got history under some of the footnotes for some of the words. This book is tremendous, and it's just too good to not share. I bought one for the first person I ever took through this work, and I absolutely suggest that if you are into this like I am. Obviously, I'm kind of like a Alcoholics Anonymous big book nerd. I don't know, they call them thumpers, whatever. It's just, to me, it's fascinating, and I can't think of a better way to have a study guide, than to use this book. Obviously, I still use this book because there's some stuff in the points of interest that we went over early on that are not in this book. Some of the forewords, this only got the original foreword. The preface is not there. But, it really goes in depth. All the important chapters are still in there. The doctor's opinion, there's a solution, Bill's story. They're all there. So I wanted to just take a second to plug this book. If anyone's really into studying the big book the way I am, I think it can only be beneficial. And for $17, I used to buy rounds at the bar that were like well more than that. It's money well spent, okay? And the history that has, embodies this volume, it's tremendous. It just is tremendous. It's too good to not share. So I want to point that out. And also the same person that told me about this. I love this woman. She's wonderful. She brought me this gift. It's the original manuscript of the big book. Again, if you're a historian, like I just find it fascinating. It's tremendous. I'll just kind of open a couple pages. It shows in great detail what this publication, what this volume looked like when they were, planning on putting it together. And they were able to recreate it in color and bind it and put it in a book. This is a tremendous gift. This is one of the best gifts I've ever gotten. And so anytime I come across stuff, movies or speakers, or literature that I think is absolutely pertinent or cool to AA history or to you having a spiritual experience, or I just think would be beneficial, I'm going to pass it on to you guys, because there's no sense in keeping it a secret when I could share it with you and it could be beneficial to you. That's what we do. We pass it down. We pay it forward. We help the next person. There's no reason to keep it to ourselves. Self-will is doing what's good for me. God's will is what's good for me and everybody else. And so that's what I try to do. So that's all for Trudge this week. Again, I hope you guys are doing well. Hope your families are doing well. By now, I'm really hoping you've had a spiritual experience out there working with other people, giving back what was so freely given to you, counting on God and not on other people. That's the way to go, paying this deal forward and living life, because I'm living life. While AA has given me a life, I'm going out there and I'm living it. Amazing things are happening in my life, and I hope they're happening for you too. So until next week, that is all. Thank you for allowing me to be of service. We are drawing pretty near to finishing the program. Honestly, we're about, I'd say, 2 or 3 months, if not less, done. And then at some point I gotta find some new outlet to do. But I've really enjoyed doing this. It feeds my soul like you would not even believe. And so, until next week, everybody, have a great day. God bless, and namaste.